Azeroth, and welcome to episode 141 of the world of Goldcraft. As usual, I'm your host, the Lazy Goldmaker of thelazygoldmaker.com, and we're going to talk about gold making. Welcome back to the show. If you're following along live, make sure you post your questions in chat, and I'll answer some of them at the end. The podcast is, of course, made available by my patrons that, amongst other things, can get access to my full TSM setup for both retail and classic. So if you're interested in that, head on over to patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. And now we're going to dive into it. Of course, today is the day where 1.9.1 finally dropped. So we have to talk a little bit about that, but there's not that much to talk about yet, at least not based on what I've seen. What I wanted to talk about today is randomness. And randomness plays a very important part in many gold making endeavors. So whether you are farming anything with not 100% drop rate, it's obviously going to have some amount of randomness and variability to it. You can be shuffling materials, enchanting materials, prospecting, anything else where RNG has an effect on how much you get per hour, or where randomness plays a part. Those are the things I wanted to talk about today. And the reason is that most people are pretty bad at understanding randomness on an intuitive basis. It's very unintuitive to understand how randomness looks like and how it works. I read a really great book about this a while ago, which is called Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb, which I'm sure some of you will be familiar for his more famous book, Black Swan. Fooled by Randomness was more interesting to me in many ways. But the point here, or there are many points at play. One of them is, of course, that your brain is really good at recognizing patterns. That's what that's what it's built for, pretty much. Recognizing patterns and then understanding that, okay, when A, B, and C happens, then D is going to happen next, and D is dangerous, so we avoid A, B, and C, sort of things. That's what your brain has always been trying to do. So when you see a pattern, anything that looks like a pattern, you're going to assume that this is a pattern and that there's some kind of causality, that this is going to happen again and again and again. Because if you can take advantage of those patterns, then you'll survive more effectively. Now, the problem is that you'll notice patterns that aren't there, and this is particularly obvious, or this happens a little bit more often than otherwise in games. Because games games will often put you in a position to be exposed to not pure RNG, because they're using some kind of pseudo random number generation, but you'll see randomness, you'll see random results, and random results don't necessarily look random. That's one of the key takeaways from the book, in fact, that people are terrible at understanding how a set of random results might actually look. And we'll take an example to illustrate this. Because if you flip a coin 5 times, if it comes up head all 5 times, then many people would assume that this coin is uneven, it's imbalanced. It's more likely to come up heads than tails. Now, that might be the case, but you don't really know that, because a 5 times in a row is not that unlikely. It's about a 3% chance, assuming it's a perfect coin with 50-50 chance of landing on either side. And it's about as unlikely as any other combination of 5 coin flips. So if it'd been every other, like heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, that would have been exactly equally unlikely to happen. And that's interesting, because streaks are a lot more common when you have something truly random, like streaks where like multiple times in a row you get the same result and then suddenly you don't, are a lot more common than people might believe. So when people have streaks, their assumption, their brain immediately, like, this is a pattern, I'm on a streak. That means that the rate has changed, or that this is now due to an increase in the likelihood of this streak happening. But that's usually not the case. Now, the most fun example of this in WoW gold making for me was that every time Blizzard patched the game during BFA, every time, someone would inevitably make a post on the WoW Economy Reddit, and they would be like, I just scrapped 200 bracers and I only got 20 expulsum or whatever. Has Blizzard nerfed Expulsum from the scrapper? And of course, they hadn't. It was the same rate. It was the same rate the entire expansion. And they just had one bad session. So what they did, they did one relatively small session in the grand scheme of things. They had one bad session, and their brains immediately were like, "This was a bad session, and this is just after the patch. There must be a connection." But of course there wasn't. So that was just very, very interesting to see. Of course, most of these people did not have a large enough sample to even know if the rate was changed, because you need a lot. You need a lot of them. You need to scrap a lot of bracers if you're gonna be sure that the rate has changed, because the chance was not that high. It was about, if I remember correctly, you had a 15% chance per scrap of getting Expulsum. So I did the math on this once upon a time. It was I think you needed to scrap at least 1,000 or something like that, to even be reasonably certain that you were close to the real rate, regardless of what it was. At least when it was in that order of magnitude, about 15%. So my general approach to randomness in WoW is to ignore it, and how I ignore it is by figuring out the expected outcome. So finding out the average number of gems you get per prospect, and then I'll just assume that I get the average number of gems. But that only works if you prospect or go through enough materials or do this thing enough that you actually reach the average results. And depending on how unlikely something is to happen, how small the chance is, this can be anywhere from like doing it 100 times to doing it multiple thousands of times. So for instance, for Transmutation Mastery, I just assume that my cost is decreased by a factor of 1.2 because I know I get on average 20% extra when I transmute. So I really have to do it enough, and how much is enough varies quite a bit from activity to activity. For Darkmoon cards, for instance, you have to craft literally thousands of cards if you want to make sure that you get roughly even amounts of decks and actually don't end up with a third of your cards being wasted cards. This is of course also why trading cards is quite good for those of you who were doing Darkmoon decks heavily and trading cards at the beginning of Shadowlands. If you're prospecting Adamantite or in TBC, it's pretty much the same deal. You're looking at like something like a 3% chance of even getting a rare gem per ore, or 3% rate per ore. So you definitely need to go through thousands of ore if you want to be fairly certain that if you want to have a high degree of confidence that you'll actually end up with enough living rubies to make it worth your while. Because if you're doing a small batch and you don't get living rubies, there's a good chance you didn't make money on that prospecting. But if you do thousands of ore, then you'll be getting living rubies and you will be making back your money, because the living ruby is such an important part of the value of adamantite ore prospecting. So that's it. Now, of course, very low chance events. The lower the chance, the harder it is to understand or to wrap your head around it. Obviously, the big part is all of the stuff I talked about with the scrapper nerfed posts, because people didn't realize that they needed to scrap thousands of items to actually know. Now, interestingly, in the case of the scrapper, it was very easy to calculate for those of us with a little bit of statistics. There's a distribution that fits perfectly to the kind of problem where you do something and you either get what you wanted, you either get Expulsum or you don't. And you have an idea of, or you think you know what the rate is, you know what the rate was in the last patch, it was 15% in the last patch. Then you can actually very easily compute how many scraps you need to do to even be sure of whether or not the rate has changed. I don't know, I haven't redone the math. I know I did it back in the day when people were posting about this, doing their 200 bracer or even lower. They were doing 50 or 100 bracer samples and trying to conclude whether or not the price is meaningfully changed, and obviously it was completely pointless. But all of this difficulty about understanding RNG is one of the reasons why a lot of the RNG-based gold making, like crafting, like stuff like shuffling, prospecting, I think the fact that they are random plays into why they are profitable, and helps make them more profitable. Because a lot of people don't understand expected value even, just like what's the average results from doing this, and the fact that if you do it enough, then you will reach those average results, and you have to calculate your profit based on that. But people will just routinely misjudge the value, misjudge the effort required, and they'll make the wrong decisions. Or maybe they just shy away from the whatever RNG method if they do smaller batches. Say they prospect 100 ore at a time, adamantite ore. So they buy 100 ore and they got 2 living rubies. Adamantite ore prospecting is insanely profitable, is their conclusion. And then they do the next batch and they just get talasites that are worthless compared to living rubies. And then they do another batch and they get 1 night's eye and 1 dawnstone, and it's like okay, but they barely made their money back. And then they do 1 more, and they get like another talasite, and that's the only thing. And they're like, adamantite ore prospecting is not worth it. It's not profitable. I'm not going to do this. So that's why I think a lot of people stay away from this, because they don't really understand what you need to do to succeed, which is just to do it a lot. You cannot be in the low volume business in anything that has variability and randomness in WoW. And you can really just take advantage of that if you're comfortable with the math. You don't really need a lot of math, but if you're comfortable with the expected value and just cranking, then you can really take advantage of all of these randomness markets. And I've been making tons of gold ever since TUC Classic launched with prospecting. I've made so much gold in the past with the scrapper, with a bunch of other things. Usually these methods are also a little bit time consuming and annoying to do. Like, it's annoying to disenchant, it's annoying to prospect. So that's also going to make people shy away from it. Other ways you can take advantage of, if you're playing retail WoW, very often you will be able to get your essences cheaper if you buy ore and prospect it than if you buy the essences straight up, if you're doing jewel crafting based legendaries. So that's something to look for as well. It's just the way it is. People are going to stay away. The same thing, milling. If you're crafting missives or anything else from inscription, mill your own herbs, you'll save money, which is going to be really nice for you, obviously. So that was what I wanted to say about the randomness. Now, obviously, we can't do this episode without talking at least a little bit about 9.1. And I'm recording this. Well, I was going to record this while waiting for the EU servers to go up, but the EU servers went up early, so I got to do the whole stream today on EU on the servers. So what I saw, servers were up. Someone tried to post some Corthoid crystals for 400,000 gold. They're not going to sell for that much. No one in their right mind would buy that. You can't even get the Vestige of Origins recipe this week. So no one's going to buy Corthoid crystals. I think it's likely that we'll see some pretty cheap Corthoid crystals this week, actually. They might peak at some low prices. I'm not sure how low they'll go. But I wouldn't be surprised if they dip down below 1,000 gold. So I've just done some casual Korthia today, or not casual. I've done Korthia on both my accounts at the same time, following myself around. I'm sitting on 8 Corthoid crystals at the moment, so that's like 1/5 of a vestige. So you're getting them at a reasonable rate. You're getting them, and you'll get new dailies tomorrow, etc. So I don't think there'll be the mania isn't going to step in, because there's no one buying yet. No one's buying rank 5s because you can't craft them. No one's crafting vestiges because you can't craft them. So no one's going to really buy Corthoid crystals at any particularly expensive prices. Because by the time you can actually start crafting and selling these items, there'll be a decent supply available. A decent supply. Now, how much can rank 5 sell for? I have no idea. Anywhere from 200 to 400k early on, and then I expect they'll trend down. I don't... If rank 5s are too expensive, then most people will skip them and go straight to rank 6. And it all depends on the Corthoid crystal price, which is going to be the biggest part here. So the more expensive Corthoid crystals are, more players will just go straight to rank 6 and skip rank 5. Because the price difference between rank 5 and 6 is actually quite small. If the Corthoid crystals are expensive, which I'll expect they'll be relatively expensive. Like, they'll be a very large portion of the cost for a rank 5 or 6 legendary, but we'll see. I did the Maw skip, or the Korthia intro skip on my alts. My crafting alts, which I think loses me out a little bit Death's Advance reputation. And Death's advanced reputation is fairly slow. There's even some of the sources that are mentioned in the Wowhead write-up that I can't see in the game. It's supposed to be some weekly quests that aren't there. I got about 1700 rep on my alts that skipped Corthoid today. I think there's a little bit more I can get, like that's on a weekly basis. Like there are some weekly quests that I can do that I need to do. There's the Hellsworn battle plans from Desmoteron, and there's some stuff from inside the Rift dimension. So we'll see if we can get that. Hopefully we can. Outside of that, it's just doing the dailies. I already did the weekly quest. We finished that. So we'll just have to keep working on it, essentially. For the Archivist's Codex, I made it to... I'm almost ranked tier 3 on both of my crafters. Almost tier 3. I'm not sure how much... you can farm, but it's super slow if you want to farm. Like, you can go around and kill the mobs that have the purple tint. And I don't think it's particularly valuable. Outside of that, you're just looking for, like, random chests and rares outside of doing some of the stuff that's... I'm not sure exactly what's weekly or daily capped here. So we'll have to see what that is down the line. Presumably you want to just kill as many rares as you can. Pay attention, there's a lot of them that get announced in the zone chat that you want to be aware of. If someone opens the ancient teleporter or something like that, that's going to give you a huge chunk of ancient research. I also did all of the like one-time things, all of the one-time relics I can, all of the ones that are open, and we probably just have to wait for the next part of the zone to open, which I'm not sure if that's next week or the week after. But definitely relatively easy to sort of get semi-maxed out on what you can do week 1. We're still looking at tier 4, which is quite far off still. There's a lot to go for tier 4, which is where you get the reward, the chain dial, the crafter's mark of the chain dial, which is why I'm doing it. So it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be well, I'm not sure how long it'll be, like a week or two. It'll be quite a while until someone can get Death's Advance. Not sure exactly how that's capped out to, like how much you can get per exactly how much you can get per week, but you're looking at I doubt you can get honored in a week. I doubt it. So I doubt we'll see any crafters marks this week. It might be possible with pure min maxing, and if you did the full intro on all your alts. But not sure if that's worth it or not. That's really up to you. If it means that you don't have time to do the dailies today, if it means you won't have time to do the dailies, then I think skipping is better if it ensures that you do the dailies, because I think you get more rep from those. But if you have time to do the dailies anyway, then I wouldn't skip. Then I would do the full intro, even though it's gonna bore you to tears. That's why I didn't do it, because I'd get bored to tears. So that's the first things I've seen in 9.1. So lastly, I have a question from one of my patrons that was asked on Discord this week. I thought was a good one to discuss a little bit more about the reasons why. Because the question is, what are some good items to flip in the Burning Crusade Classic? So there's a lot of Classic era materials that are really good to flip, because people need them to level their professions, and they want to have a 300 profession skill, so they can then go to 375 and be get the PvE bonuses. So there's a lot of materials, particularly ore, cloth, and herbs. And enchanting materials are really good. There's tons of sale volume. People are willing to overpay, because there's literally no other way to get it than either that or go farm. And they'll be like, okay, I guess I have to overpay. They don't even know what the market value is. They just know that, okay, so that's what the price is. Okay, I guess I'll have to pay that for Vision Dust. I've personally sold more than 2,000 gold worth of Vision Dust since TBC launched. So that's definitely a great market. So anything that you need to level up your classic professions. So just go to any like 1 to 300 classic profession guide, particularly for the most popular ones, tailoring, jewel crafting, enchanting, and just read up on what materials they need to buy. And if you go to the enchanting guide, you'll see that Vision Dust is needed in like 300 Vision Dust, or just more than almost any other dust type, which is why Vision Dust is so good. Now you should also be able to start flipping some of the TBC era materials, particularly herbs, meats, rep tokens. The Scryer's older rep tokens are really good. And there's also a bunch of vendor recipes you can pick up. The best ones are the tailoring recipes from Sanctum of the Stars if you're a Scryers. Pick those up every time you're in Shadow Moon Valley or close by and mail them to your banker. I'm selling them for 15 gold profit per, and they sell as fast as I pick them up. I don't do this religiously, but just every time I'm in Sanctum of the Stars, I check the vendor, and if they're there, I buy them and send them to my banker. Consumable prices should also be stabilizing now, so that means that consumable flipping is definitely possible as well. This is something that's also worked since the dawn of time. You're looking to buy consumables when they're a little cheaper during the weekend, whenever people aren't raiding but are farming and crafting, and then when the raids reset and people go back into the raids and buy consumables, they're going to be willing to pay a little bit more because the auction house runs a little drier. And as more and more people finish their crafted gear sets, we're going to see people dedicate more of their gold, or be able to dedicate more of their gold to consumables. So I think we should see an increase in the demand for consumables. You can definitely spend a lot of gold on consumables. I've seen a ton of destruction potion sales the last 24 hours. So hopefully that keeps up. We can start to see some real money in alchemy as well. So guys, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, just come and say hi in any of my channels, whether on Twitch or on the website or anywhere. I really appreciate it. Hope you're having a nice, profitable week, whether you're doing 9.1 or TBC, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye, guys.